Hello everyone. I used to believe that if World War III happened, humanity would go straight back to the Stone Age. However, there was one event that completely changed how people think about war, and you might not believe it when you hear this. World War III might happen without a single soldier being killed. So how could that be possible? Let's go back many years. It was rumored that when President Obama won the election, he went to meet his predecessor. Before leaving office, the former president handed Obama a secret. That secret was a plan to attack Iran in a way that had never been done before. Of course, whether this information was true or just a rumor, nobody has any video evidence to verify it. But one fact remains. The attack on Iran did happen, and it shocked the entire world. So what exactly happened? It's believed that the United States and Israel carried out an attack, not with stealth aircraft or super bombs capable of penetrating dozens of meters of concrete, but with malware. At that time, to avoid the attention and condemnation of the world, the U.S. chose to use malware. But this wasn't just any virus, not even a so-called super virus. Compared to the U.S.-Israel project named Olympic Games, every virus before it was nothing more than a grain of sand. After the project succeeded, analysts assessed that the resources and intelligence invested in it were enormous. It required a huge amount of funding, the involvement of IT geniuses of the highest caliber, deep knowledge of industrial machinery, especially Iran's uranium enrichment centrifuge system, and finally, cooperation with Israel's sophisticated intelligence network to succeed. So, what were the details of this project? At the time, Iran had a massive uranium enrichment system, and the U.S. and Israel feared that if Iran continued enriching uranium, it might reach the level needed to develop nuclear bombs. If that happened, Israel would have no means left to defend itself. As you know, Israel and Iran have huge differences in population, territory, and allies. Looking around, all of Israel's neighbors wanted to push them out of the Middle East. The only thing Israel had to protect itself was nuclear weapons. If Iran also had nuclear weapons, Israel would have no chance of survival. Therefore, the project's goal was to destroy Iran's centrifuges. But there was no acceptable reason to attack openly, and the U.S. didn't want worldwide condemnation, so they had to destroy them quietly. The only way to do that was through a cyber attack. However, the computers controlling Iran's centrifuges were completely isolated, placed deep underground, and entirely disconnected from the internet. So, how could they be infiltrated without a network connection? This required cooperation with intelligence forces to understand the operating patterns and identify who had access to these computers, then secretly install malware on their devices, such as through a USB drive. Currently, USB drives are still known to be an entry point to Iran's computers, but exactly how the malware was delivered through USB remains undisclosed. The next issue was that the project's computer worm had to meet certain requirements. First, it had to operate on its own without human intervention. If normal computer viruses need user actions like clicking a mouse, opening software, or pressing keys to activate, this worm could run automatically without any user input. Second, it had to self-replicate and carry out the attack. According to later reports, the worm, named Stuxnet, had an extremely complex structure, like a small piece of advanced software. Once installed on a machine, it would replicate itself and spread to other machines through the internal network. Notably, it would only copy itself to 3 machines at a time to avoid detection. Then it would search for the centrifuge control software, generate malicious code, seize control, and make the centrifuges run at overload until they broke. The remarkable thing about this worm was that it did everything by itself. Because there was no internet connection, there was no hacker controlling it from outside. It had to operate independently. This was a type of computer worm that had never been created before. Extremely sophisticated and cunning. To hide itself, it achieved several things. First, it could hide all its own files, making them invisible to normal computer users, and even bypass virus scanning systems. According to reports, this worm exploited at least 4 different security vulnerabilities on Iran's computers. When exploiting even one vulnerability is already a major accomplishment. Second, To destroy Iran's centrifuges, it ran them at overload, but only for 15 minutes before returning them to normal. The clever part was that it also altered the monitoring reports, so operators would see that everything was running smoothly, while in reality, the machines were being overworked and close to breaking. Third, and most sophisticated of all, Stuxnet was designed to target only centrifuges, leaving all other devices untouched. Even if it spread to normal computers, it caused no noticeable effects, making its presence undetectable. This was a perfectly precise strike in a cyber war. We saw how a worm hidden in a USB stick could secretly enter a computer, replicate itself across the entire nuclear plant's network, hide itself, take control of centrifuge software, and run the machines abnormally, overloading them for 15 minutes each time while generating fake reports so that supervisors noticed nothing. It operated like this for months without detection. Even after centrifuges were destroyed, engineers had no idea why. Stuxnet was as intelligent as modern AI, capable of doing everything by itself. And remember, this project began 20 years ago. No one had imagined a computer worm so complex and devious. In the end, around 2,000 of Iran's centrifuges were destroyed, with another 1,000 losing performance capacity. Fortunately, it was discovered in time. How did Iran detect it? It turned out that while Stuxnet was almost perfect, it had one flaw. When it infected a regular computer, that machine started acting strangely. Even after reinstalling Windows, the issue persisted. IT staff investigated thoroughly and found the worm. They realized it was linked to the damaged centrifuges, and checking the nuclear facility's network, they found it everywhere. If not for this incident, Iran might have lost all its centrifuges without knowing why. After this, people no longer called Stuxnet just a computer worm, they considered it a weapon of war. For a long time, ordinary viruses only stole data. They didn't physically damage equipment. This attack actually destroyed expensive Iranian hardware more effectively than a B-2 bomber dropping a GBU-57 bomb, and without a single casualty. And in the future, there could be many more attacks like this. Since Stuxnet, at least 5 or 6 of its descendants have been discovered, such as Flame, Havox, and Gauss, and one of them even took control of a power plant in Ukraine, causing a widespread blackout. Now, with AI advancing rapidly, creating worms like Stuxnet could be easier and far more dangerous. Not to mention that tiny robots small as flies are being developed quickly. Weapons systems like missiles, tanks, and aircraft can all be connected to internal networks and controlled remotely. So what would happen if a tiny robot carrying a USB plug could move by itself, insert into an isolated computer, and then infiltrate, take control, and operate the connected weapons? It's almost unimaginable. It's even possible that, right now, many computers are already infected with worms like Stuxnet, silently altering missile targets. Would we even notice? Missile misfires happen all the time. And if those mistakes were intentional sabotage, the number of incidents could be far greater than we think. In short, when it comes to cyber warfare, we can never truly know everything, because it's too hidden to see with the naked eye. Your computer, or mine, could already be infected with a virus, or even a worm just lying dormant waiting for the right moment to act. How would we know? So what do you think about this kind of shadow war? Let's discuss. All right, folks. That's it for today's little trip into the shadows of modern warfare. If you thought this was wild, trust me, there's way more where that came from. So, hit that subscribe button like you're trying to swat a cyber mosquito, because the next story might just make you unplug your Wi-Fi forever. Until then, stay curious, stay safe, and remember, just because your computer's quiet doesn't mean it's innocent. See you next time.